All right. Well, good morning. There's a few people who registered from overseas. So if it's not morning, hello, whatever time zone you're coming from. But I know there's a few faces here from Australia. So welcome on a Friday morning here. A lovely warm day in Queensland where I am. Welcome to this very special masterclass about such an important topic, actually. It's something that if you've worked with me before, you'll know how passionate I am about this. And if you haven't, you're going to find out. So I look forward to telling you a little bit more about the devotional woman concept and why it's important. So let's start to get into a few things. I've got some slides on the screen for you to read through, but you can listen if you're not someone who likes to look at slides. They're just there to make it easier for you to digest some key things that I'm going to cover. So key things I'd love you to take away from this masterclass is why devotional relationship is important and how the impact that has when we show up as women in a devotional space if we're relating to men. And that's the context I'm teaching within. I teach to heterosexual couples. So devotion can be effective in any relationship, but I am specifically going to be talking about it in a heterosexual perspective. Common mistakes that we make with men. This is a big one. So we're going to be talking about this. We're going to be talking about what a devotional woman, in my perspective, in what I teach and what I do my best to live, what I believe that is, and what it looks like and what it feels like. And then some ways that you can start to become more of that woman, which I imagine is what you're here for, what you're interested in. But we need to understand some of the other pieces first so that the rest makes sense. All right. So a little bit about my journey and how I got here. I can tell you about my qualifications and my training, but I think when I'm speaking to women, what matters the most is actually how I got here and why I'm so passionate about devotional dynamics and relationship. So a short introduction. I was married to a partner. We were together for 17 years. My son is actually the product of that marriage. He's now almost 15. So we were together for quite a long time. And in that relationship, I read a lot of books around Tantra, sacred sexuality, masculine, feminine dynamics, works of David Data, if you're familiar with these. But nothing deeply really ever changed in our relationship as a result of all the books and all the study. When I look back, I can see all the things that I was doing wrong and the things he was doing wrong too. But all I can do is take responsibility for my part in the relationship. And there's so many things that I didn't have the skills or the understanding that I have now that would have made the outcome of that relationship very different. I criticized him a lot. I bitched to him about him to my friends all the time. I didn't take my problems to him consistently. I would complain when he wouldn't do things, or I'd nag him when he wouldn't do things. These are all really common things that women do. I didn't have the appreciation for what he really needed in the relationship. It was always seen as an inconvenience when he wanted something from me, particularly when we had a child. It was exhausting. And the biggest mistake I think I made in that was putting our relationship lower on the hierarchy than the parenting relationship. So what I mean by that is I prioritized my son. I gave him all the love, all the care, all the attention. And my husband was left with the leftovers. And so if you relate to this, please use the little emojis at the bottom and just let me know if this is something you've either experienced or are familiar with if you're a parent, or even if you've been in a relationship and you've taken the relationship for granted, because it is something that a lot of women do. We don't put the relationship at a high enough level. Everything else comes first. We might want it to thrive, but as a result, I continued to build more resentment. He built more resentment. And eventually we basically went parted ways. And it was the ending of that relationship that created so much pain in me, because I had done so much study to try and improve it, and yet it still wasn't enough. And so one of the things that I became really, really passionate about is how to bridge the gap between the head and the heart and the pussy. And so this is something, if you've heard me talk before, you'll know that embodiment it underpins all of my work. And that is really one of the biggest things that got me here, was the humility and the shame of that marriage ending, and not ever wanting to go through that pain again, but also having to look at myself and understand I knew the concepts in my head, but I wasn't living them through my body. And that's what embodied practice started to teach me how to do. And so I was already doing some embodiment at that time, but not at the level that I do it now, where it's like a yogic practice. It's an everyday experience of getting on the mat, but also how I show up in the world. And so I've basically spent the last 6 years being completely immersed in that. And it changed me very, very quickly, because change happens through the body. And so that experience was a massive gift for me, because it brought me into an understanding of all the ways that I was holding men at a distance. And this is something I hear a lot of women talk about as well. So I think it's nice to have a sense that if you've been in a long-term partnership, or if you're a parent, I know what that's like. I relate to you. And I've probably been where you are, if you're struggling with some of those things as well. So let's talk a little bit now. You have a sense of who I am, at least a little bit. There's lots I can say that I won't go into today, about why devotion is important in our intimate relationships. And I am going to really invite you to be interactive with me. Again, you've got the bottom bar here on Zoom. You can give me a love heart, a thumbs up. You can give me little emojis. So if you could let me know how this is landing for you, it would be really, really helpful, because it lets me know that you're still here and you haven't fallen asleep, for one, but also that what I'm sharing is relevant for you. So why is devotion important? You might know that a lot of relationships are struggling. Again, I'm talking heterosexual, because they're the couples that I work with, but all relationships are struggling. Even people I know who are in the queer category, their relationships are struggling too. And a lot of people are losing hope that healthy relationships are possible. I think that we have this fantasy of what love and union looks like that is painted by the media, by movies, by love stories. And the problem is that it skews what is healthy, what I would term healthy, meaning it gets so overly romanticized, we don't even know what the real version of that looks like. And yet most of us want it, and we don't know how to translate it. And so there's the fantasy, and there's reality, and there's a space in the middle where union actually happens. And so it's figuring out what needs to happen to get into that space, and then to maintain a relationship in that space. But also, so many relationships are struggling because everyone is busy blaming everyone else. Men are blaming women, women are blaming men. And this is not the way for us to move forward, I don't believe. My view is always self-responsibility. How can I take responsibility for this in myself? And then how do I communicate that better to the other person? And the more we do that, the more our relationships start to change. The thing is, if we're all showing up with resentment and blame, it's really hard to access a higher level of magic, love, union, what I would call third stage relating. I'm not going to talk about that in great detail today, because it's a very big topic. But the concept of higher level relating is when we are in service to the relationship, not just to our own needs all the time. And when we're in that energetic, that is where devotion starts to come in. And so what I'm seeing, there's 2 points at the bottom. What I'm seeing so much in the men that come and work with me at workshops, and the women that I work with, I work predominantly with women, except in mixed gender spaces, is the men are losing confidence in their ability to be strong, powerful men. They've been told women want them to be soft, or that it's not, welcome, and they need to be emotional. And they're really confused about what we want from them, essentially, a lot of them. And then the men who are strong are maybe coming on too hard. They don't have the balance of strength with humility that a lot of us as women want. But because we are asking so much more of men these days, we've gone through this evolution of feminism, where we can show up, where we can make money, where we can do all these things. And so women are like, I don't need you. If I'm going to be in a relationship with you, it needs to be really better than just being treated like a subservient woman or a housewife, or whatever the thing is that makes us feel less than. And so us as women have started to ask more of men than ever, and the men are confused. They don't know, a lot of them don't know how to give us what we want, and they want to give us what we want. But they are also struggling because they don't have the skills, like I described in my relationship, to move it from the head into the whole body, how to translate it. And so this is where devotion starts to become important. When we're in devotion to the relationship, these things become less of a sticking point, because we're not always thinking about our own needs. What am I going to get? What is this relationship going to give me? What are they doing wrong? Why don't they meet my needs? We start to be in service to, how can this relationship be a vehicle for our evolution? And that, for me, is what real third stage relationship is, what real sacred union starts to look like. This relationship is our vehicle for growth. It's in spiritual service to both of us. So just giving you a moment to digest that. Devotion is a big topic, and so we're going to start to touch on some different aspects of it. And again, I taught a couples immersion, I think it was nearly 2 weeks ago now. And we talked a lot about devotion. So I'm not going to go into, we're talking weeks and weeks of teaching content here, and I'm just trying to give you a little taste. So forgive me if there's things I don't go into that you want me to go into. This is a free invitation to give you a taste of my deeper work. But one of the reasons that I believe devotion is important is the energetic that it sets up in the relationship. And here's something that I want to say to us as women. You don't need to learn how to be devotional. You already are. It is actually the most natural state for a woman to be in devotion. We are made to be devotional. When we feel safe and loved and cherished, we will naturally be in devotion to our partner, to our man. But most of us have walked around in a world where we've been hurt, where we've taken on patterns of relating and interacting with other people that have been damaging from both sides. And so what tends to happen as women, because we lead from our hearts, energetically from a tantric perspective, we give to the world from our heart. We have armored our hearts and stopped giving so generously because it hurt. We ended up in pain. We got left, all sorts of different things. So many women these days are parenting on their own. Their marriage has ended, and they're hating men because they feel, let down. Then they're struggling financially. And so the only way that most of us have learned to manage that is to armor up our hearts and put barriers around the natural part of us that gives. But we need a certain amount of safety to do that, to be in our devotion. And this is why, so I'm talking really about the intention of a long-term partnership. And for those of you who don't have a partner, it's how do you be that woman for your future partner? Because you'll invite them into your life much more easily if you're creating the space for that, versus I'll wait till I get here and then I'll be in devotion. So most of us, because we've armored our hearts, we've learned to hold back our radiance, our beauty, but also the part of us that is a nurturer. Devotion can come across in many, many ways. And it's not, to me, about being subservient to someone else. It's completely different to submission. There is an overlap, but they're not the same. But the bigger point is, until we as women address these wounds, it's relevant for men too, but I'm talking to us as women, until we address these parts of us that have held back our hearts, we cannot really invite in a man to relate to us at this high level of sacred union. And if we're already in a partnership, we can't invite him to step up and hold the position of power, respect, of being on the throne, like the king on the throne, if we are hiding away the parts of us that are natural or devotional, and also if we're disrespecting him. So let's talk a little bit about some of the common mistakes that women make flowing on from this in our relationships with men. And again, I'd love you to give me an emoji or just comment in the thread. Do you recognize yourself in some of these? Do you roll your eyes when they make a funny joke? Do you check out when they're sharing personal things about their workday? Like, oh God, I don't want to listen to this. Do you find yourself thinking you're smarter than them, or they're stupid, they're inferior? Do you think that they should be understanding how you're thinking and feeling because your female friends do? And then get perplexed when they don't? Do you question their decisions? So if you are in partnership, and your man's driving the car and he's looking for a car park, do you tell him where to go and what to do, or get pissed off at him when he, gets you lost? Do you question his leadership? Or micromanage decisions he makes at a household level, at a financial level, even with the kids or in business? If you're not in partnership, you'll see yourself potentially doing some of these things out in the world. So just notice the men that are in your life that you relate to, and some or all of these that could be true for you. Do you treat him like a boy? A lot of us as women, we want a man in the house. Like I did this to my ex-husband. He would be, in my eyes, he was a man when he was at work, but then he'd come home and I'd cut him down and treat him like a little boy when he did stuff wrong. And that is incredibly disrespectful. But so many of us as women do it. We want a man, but we treat him like a boy. And the other thing is the second last point: shaming, berating, castrating. This is something a lot of women do. It's become socially accepted and actually socially validated for us to be, for example, at a dinner with other couples or other men and women, and a man says something and a woman makes a joke and cuts him down, and then other women join in and gang up on him or laugh at him. This is castration. This is, in my view, the ultimate form of disrespect for the masculine. So these are some mistakes that are really culturally normalized, at least where I live, but in most first world countries, except for those who have really kept a deeper thread of devotion. You go to someone like Bali in Thailand, and the women there look up at their men. But here in Australia, in America, many other places, it's less common. So I would love to hear from you in the comments. Do you relate to any of these? Yeah. Okay. Questioning their decisions and their leadership, I'm assuming there, Tessa. Yeah, and it's natural for these things to arise because this is what we've been taught, usually by our mothers, our grandmothers, or our female role models. But the problem is Just because it's been taught through their actions doesn't mean it's good, doesn't mean it's helpful, doesn't mean it's useful. And it certainly doesn't mean it's setting us up for a high level of relationship. Because unless our parents have that, we shouldn't be learning from them. That's the truth. Okay. So let's talk about some deeper truths about men. Now, before I do this, what I want to say is there could be some things that I say in this masterclass that trigger you, and I'm not going to apologize for that. But what I invite you to do is to really reflect, is part of this true for me? Because what we are talking about is quite an edgy conversation. Devotion from women to men is actually not that socially accepted in our world. As I said, places like Bali and Thailand, it's the normal culture. But in most other countries, it is not. It's considered archaic. It's considered that men and women are equal. I'm not saying that we don't all have gifts, but equality is not the same because we are different. Men and women are different. And that's what I'm talking about. The differences between men and women and how to create a really sacred union is not about sameness. It's about celebrating our differences. And so if things come up for you throughout this masterclass and you need support, please reach out to me. But also notice if your body contracts, notice if you feel stories in your head or judgment or other things happening, because that is an invitation to go deeper into some of this. It suggests there's something in you that's not completely open to these concepts, and yet you're here and you're curious. So let's go a little deeper. So these are the things that I have learned are true about men. And there are many more things than this. This is just some high level points. But again, my ego had to die when I came out of my marriage. And these are things that I discovered. Men are not actually dumb. We are not inferior to them. And not all women think this, but it is not uncommon. Men are good. There are bad men in the world. Yes, I'm not denying that. But most men have good hearts. However, they have been mistreated by us as much as we have been mistreated by them. And so they have wounds around the feminine like we have wounds around the masculine. And we need to consider that if we're engaging and relating with men. They process information very differently to how we do. And if we treat them like women, we're making a big mistake, because they're not. They're not big, hairy women. They're men. They're wired biologically different, and they have a lot of different emotional needs. And to communicate to a man, to engage him, to be on board in a relationship, we often need to do it differently than we would with our female friends. And these are things we've not been taught. Unless your parents have an amazing relationship and they've modeled it for you, this is why most marriages are failing, because we don't understand the differences between men and women. Sometimes women say men don't want to commit, and that's actually not true. Men are incredibly committal. You look at a man's commitment to his work, his career, he's heavily committed. But sometimes men hold back on committing to a relationship for other reasons, their own wounding, or they haven't found the right person. It is not because they are incapable of commitment. Men have very, very big hearts. For a healthy man, he tends to hold, and this never ceases to amaze me. I see this again and again and again. He tends to hold a deep sense of protection towards women, towards the feminine. And they idolize us. Healthy men are in absolute awe and wonderment of us as women. We can give birth. We can create life. We can process multiple bits of information while they can only do one. And so there's many things about us that fascinate them, but most of all, they are made to protect us, to provide for us. Biologically, they are built for that. And that is a deeper truth that sometimes when we talk about equality, we're not really acknowledging the strength of men. And the last point, they really show their love differently than we do. If we expect a man is going to bring us flowers because that's what we want, some men do, but not all men. Other men show their love in completely different ways. And so learning to speak the language of men is really helpful if we want to be in deep union with a man and if we want to feel safe, loved, and cherished by him. So just consider, how do these statements feel? And I'd love you to put in the chat. And I want you to feel into your body. Does your body contract? Does your body open at this idea? Does it feel true? Do you feel resistance to these statements? Just what are the sensations in your body from what I'm talking about around my perspective on what is true about men? Because embodiment is at the root of everything I teach, I'm going to be inviting you to continue to check in with your own body. Because this work is not done from our head, it's done through the wider nervous system, somatic practice, embodied practice. We won't be doing embodied practice today, but just checking in with your body and noticing how your body feels and responds is the beginning of that process. So, really noticing how these statements land for you. Is anyone going to share with me what happens in your body? Lands well. Okay. Feels grounded. Yes, there's very different expressions of masculine and feminine, definitely. And that's again a topic I'm not going into today. I'm using those terms, but I'm not going to define them. So forgive me for that. Otherwise, we will be here for quite a long time. And so sometimes, for some women, hearing this will be very triggering. It'll be like, this has not been my experience of men. And I want to say, if that's how you feel, that's what happens in your body, that's okay. Just notice there is a part of you that doesn't fully feel safe with men yet. And it's a really common wound that most women have at some point, depending on our history. We all have personal history. We all have personal experiences and wounds. But it's really hard to come into deeper union until we start to notice the things that are, again, holding our hearts at bay. If it doesn't feel safe to imagine that men want to show up for us and protect us and care for us and love for us, that is the place for you to start. We're going to talk about that a little bit more as well. So a key teaching concept that I just want to plant the seed on, there's many, but this is a really foundational one. Respect is the lifeblood of men. What a man wants more than anything else from his woman, and even from women he's relating to, if it's not fully romantic, he wants to be respected. That's it. There's other things he needs and wants, but it's the number one. If we do not respect a man, he will not stick around. And this is definitely how it played out in my marriage. I didn't respect him enough, consistently enough, in the ways that he needed. And so if a man is not being respected, he will eventually move on. Like if he's not being respected at work and he has a sense of respect in himself, he will leave. He will go somewhere where he's getting appreciation. But the deeper aspect of this for us as women is, until we respect them, we won't let ourselves feel fully safe or held by them. And this is why when we talk about sacred union, What men need is respect as a key foundation, and what women need is safety. These are two sides of the duality. They're both valid, but they're different. And one can feed the other. When men understand how much we need safety, they can give it to us. And when we understand how much they need respect, we can focus on, coming into healthy relationship with them, or doing our best to honor them and respect them in the way that translates for them. Mm. So I guess I'm going to invite you now to reflect. Do you respect men? And I want you to give yourself an honest answer. Yes. If it's a maybe, it's a no. Ask your body, does all of you, to your bones, your heart, your womb, your throat, does everything feel completely open and like, yes, I fully respect men? Or is there a bit of contraction and closure somewhere? Then it's a maybe, which is a no. So just notice this. How much do you really, really deeply to your core respect men? And there's no judgment around this. It's just really, really important to understand, because when we don't feel safe with men, we don't want to respect them. And so this is the part of what we do as women, is how we hold ourselves apart from the healthy relationship, because we're like, I'm not going to give him that. He's not giving me this. Mm. So there's a caveat on that. I respect men and women who are respectful. I'm just asking at a general level. Do you respect all men? I'm not saying all men are worthy of it. Do you respect all men? Ask your body. This is a really high level invitation to be honest with yourself. Because again, if we don't hold full respect for men, then we have some wounds, and it's okay. We all have them. We all have them, but we need to be truthful with ourselves about what they are before we can start to move beyond them. I don't feel safe with many men. Thank you for that truth. And that is common. That is really, really common. And I know a lot of women watching this will relate. And that is where the work starts for us, is noticing where we don't feel safe. Not because men have a right to be, no, let me say that different. Not because every man is worthy of respect all the time. They're human. But the more we shift our energetic into a posture of respect, the more men show up better for us. That is my experience. I'm going to talk about this in more detail, so bear with me. Let's move on a little as we continue to build on these concepts. So again, this is an advanced invitation. It's not always going to feel good. It could trigger you. It's okay if it does. Be honest. But the way that I work is inviting women to look at themselves and to work through the discomforts in their bodies, because that's where the change happens. It doesn't happen through blaming someone else. Well, one of my teachers, she uses different terminology to this, but it was such a gift when I came across this understanding that men are reflectors. So when we show up in a way in a relationship with a man, and it doesn't always have to be a romantic relationship, could be just a business relationship. But if we are projecting, blaming, always putting toxic words and judgments on them, they won't receive that. A man who has a healthy sense of respect in himself, he won't tolerate that. He'll either push back or he'll close up and pull away. So if it's a romantic relationship, he'll just tap out. This is when men just disappear. They don't want to be treated like that, and they don't have maybe enough healthy communication skills to say, I'm really not available for this. Thank you, but no thank you. They just disappear. Women do that too. They're disappearing. But understanding that they often react to what we bring. So when we bring a healthy expression, a healthy invitation, a healthy man will welcome that. We're not talking about unhealthy men here. I know that, so there's a lot of layers here. And this is why I teach at very deep levels. It's really hard to understand in an hour, but a man who's really healthy will always reflect back the deeper truth of what you're bringing to him, even if he doesn't understand it, even if you don't welcome it. So when, for example, if we are suppressing our emotions and feeling, oh, I can't share that with him, it's not safe, he's not going to like it if I get emotional, and we're holding these parts of ourselves back, then he will usually reflect that back and be, oh, you're so sensitive, don't be like this, don't be like that. So it's not that he's necessarily judging us. There's often an energetic reflection that men tend to bring to us. This is the beauty of relationship. If we can look at it from this perspective, we can learn, what are they reflecting back at us? Again, when they're healthy, when they're heavily in trauma and wounding, they're imperfect as well, the same as we are, but we're talking at a higher level intention. Another example, a lot of women I hear from, they're overworked, they're exhausted, they're fatigued. They want to self-care more, but they don't really value it in themselves, so they don't really prioritize it. And then sometimes their man or a man around them will be like, oh, what, you doing that? You spent the whole day at the spa? And they can get judgy around it because they're reflecting back a deeper part within us that doesn't actually feel okay about taking the day off work to nourish ourselves, because we've been programmed all the ways that is lazy and unacceptable in this world. So these are just a few examples of how men will often reflect these things back. And then the usual inclination is we get upset at them. How dare you say that? And yet my invitation is to turn it back on yourself and go, is there part of me that actually feels this? Is there part of me that actually holds truth in this? And that's the way that I always look at when a man reflects something back to me that I don't like. Is there truth in this for me? And there's always even a small bit, sometimes big bits, sometimes small bits, but there's always something I can go, okay, there is part of me that I'm not fully comfortable with or welcoming or expressing. And thank you for reflecting that back to me. This is personal development in an embodied capacity. And so, let's talk a little bit about some healthy traits that men have. And again, this is a really big topic. I could teach on this for 2 or 3 hours. Each of these things we're touching on are little tastes of very, very big conversations. Understand there's lots of subtlety and nuance to all of this. But here's a suggestion of some frames that I use for a man who I consider to be integrated. There are other things, but this is a high-level overview. He's really self-aware. He knows himself. He welcomes himself. And by that, I mean his light and his dark. Light being his sweetness, his nurturer, his lover, his creative capacity maybe, but also his darkness, which can be the part of him that is really happy to get down and dirty, to be sexually provocative or ravishing, or to just be, a primal man out in the woods. There's all these variations of light and dark, and they're not good or bad. I'm not referring to them in that way. I'm just referring to them as a spectrum of expression. By extension of that, I also believe a man who's really in his body is integrated, because I see a lot of men walking around and they're stuck in their heads, like I was. And my ex-husband too, we both were stuck in our heads so much of our marriage. It's like a head on legs. Like if you think about a stick man with lots of legs, most people are walking around like that. And that is what I would call disembodied. We're not connected to the wider system of our nervous system and the wisdom of our body. So a man who's really embodied is connected to the knowing of his body, the wisdom of his body beyond just his head. His head has value, but he doesn't live from it all the time. He's also connected to his heart. He's also connected to his sexual power, and he uses all of these to inform himself. And again, a lot of men have lost trust in these parts of themselves. I see this all the time, men who've shut off their sexual power, their primal nature, or they've shut off their connection to their heart. All three centers are out of balance. And this is the work for men to do as much as we have our own work to do as women. Number 4, a really key trait of an integrated man, and I would also say a masculine man, masculine leaning man, is one who takes responsibility and holds himself in accountability. That means he's making decisions, he's giving clear direction, and if something goes wrong, he blames himself. And he says, what can I do better? What did I learn from this? He doesn't sit there and blame everybody else. When you're late, he's like, I didn't allow enough time for traffic. That's on me. Self-accountability is a really wonderful trait of the healthy masculine. Not a lot of men are bold enough to do that. Number 5, he's impeccable with his word, and he has a healthy no. I really struggle to respect a man that won't say no to me, because it means he's a little bit stuck in his wounding, his mother wound. He's not comfortable to say no because mummy might be upset at him. So while we have wounding around the masculine and fathers, men tend to have it around their mothers. And so being impeccable with his word is about being consistent, where he says he's going to do something. I'm going to mow the lawn tomorrow. He does it. I'm going to pay that bill tomorrow. He takes care of it. He doesn't say something and then 3 weeks later you're asking him, have you done that thing? Because he's forgotten. Being impeccable with his word creates trust in us and we feel safe. All of these things create safety in us at a nervous system level. Even if our mind doesn't understand it, it creates safety. He's very clear in his desire. A masculine man who is really integrated will let you know that he wants you. He will let you know that he wants to date you, that he wants to take you away, that if you're in a relationship, that he wants to continue to be in relationship with you, that he wants to marry you, that he wants to move in with you. He will direct all of those things. He'll be clear about it. You'll never be in question. You'll never be like, what does he want from me? If he's not clear, he's not showing up in that fullness of his power. So a masculine man who's really integrated will claim you and continue to hold his claim. And that creates safety and trust for us as women. And as feminine leaning beings, that tends to make us feel really chosen, which is something we tend to need. He's also in fierce demand of our heart. This is an advanced concept, but what that means is I talked about the armoring around the heart earlier. When we armor our hearts, he feels us pull away or protect ourselves. And it actually is painful for him. So a man who's at this level of embodiment, which is very high level, by the way, he will feel it and he will lean in and say something, do something, connect with you. He will be like, oh, where did you just go? Come back, you don't need to hide from me. Or he will offer loving touch, or he will connect with you in a way that brings you back online or invites you back online. He wants to be in connection with your heart all the time. He doesn't want you to close and push him away when you're upset and you're hurt. And so because he's really attuned to your heart and expects to have a strong relationship with it, because it's the part of you that he feels the most. It's one of the wonderful gifts of the feminine. Okay. So these are traits of what I consider to be a really healthy, integrated masculine man. Imagine the kind of woman he would want to be in relationship with. If you flip all of these into a more feminine concept, which we're going to talk about, but I want you to sort of notice it in yourself. Is he going to want to be in relationship with a woman who is flaky, who's vague, who's non-committal, who's inconsistent, who's not in her body, who projects her wounds on him, who blames him when things go wrong. No way, he's not going to put up with that. A really healthy man is going to expect a woman to show up at this same level of embodiment and integration. And this is really important because a lot of women want a man like this, but they're not willing to do the work to be the equal to him. Like attracts like. And so there might be other traits that you want on your list, if there is a list. But I want you to really consider, am I the reciprocal of this? Am I the feminine version of this before we explore what that might look like? So just take a minute with that. And also notice your body. How does your body feel around these concepts of an integrated man? Does it open you? Does it make you juicy and wet? Does it make your heart soften? Does it feel like a lot? I know when I started to really dive into these concepts a number of years ago, it was like, wow, I want that. And also I could feel a part of me was like, I'm not there yet. He wouldn't want me because I can't do all of that yet, if I'm honest with myself. And so really noticing, how much you might want this or relate to this, and how does your body respond in readiness and you as the reciprocal of that. This is really beautiful thing to reflect on. And you can certainly reflect on these once we finish the call. Do some journaling. I'm planting lots and lots of seeds for you to continue to contemplate. So a great analogy that I often use, and a number of teachers in this field use, is seeing the man at this level, the integrated man, as the archetype of the king. He's integrated the warrior, the lover, meaning he has the ability to fight. He has the ability to be loving and kind, to be a provider, to be a carer for the children. He has all of the things. He's worked on all these different parts of himself. And so the integrated representation of that is the king. So let's talk about this. If you imagine the queen standing with the king, what is her posture? Her posture, her energetic posture, and her physical frame towards him. Does she doubt him? Does she berate him like he's a child? I talked earlier about treating him like a little boy. Or does she respect him? In my view, in my belief, the healthy queen has the utmost respect for her king. The kingdom, the servants, everyone respects him. They follow his leadership, but she respects him and holds him in the highest regard. Because he is more than just a king to her. He is her lover. He is her man. And so I want you to really notice your body in this, feel the energetic aspects of this. This is the posture of the devotional woman. She has qualities of the queen. She's very strong in her core, meaning in her spine and her upright body posture. She's really calm and centered and graceful. A healthy queen is very graceful. She moves in the room. She can be quiet, but she has presence to her. She has impact. She's regal. She's not manipulative. She's not like a little girl who's trying to get power. She knows her power, but she doesn't have to exert it very often. And if she speaks with intention. She might use minimal words, but she's also soft. She's also got a softness and a radiance to her. She's not armored around her heart. So really just notice some of these things, the level of a devotional woman who is also really in this archetype of queen, power and softness, respect, contained strength. And again, notice what this feels like in your body. Take a few breaths here. Does it feel familiar? Does it feel normal? Does it feel uncomfortable or unfamiliar? Or maybe exciting, but I don't really know. This doesn't feel normal for me. Just notice all of that. So let's build on this and talk about some more specific qualities of the devotional woman. She's very in her body, what I would call embodied, but she's grounded in her body. She's not stuck in her head. She's not numb and disconnected from her body. She's also not a body or a head. She's all of it. She also has a strong internal anchor to safety, which creates the strength in her core, what I would call strong spine, open heart. She has learned to create safety in herself. She doesn't always rely on her king for it. She's safe in herself. She's a warrior too. She's not helpless. And the healthy woman needs to have this. Otherwise, when he's not around, we collapse. She's receptive. This is one of the qualities of the feminine. So, one of the beautiful traits of the feminine is receptivity. If you think about a flower and a bee, there's an openness versus being closed, rigid, armored. So, the healthy devotional woman is receptive and open, but not leaky. And what I mean by leaky is the princess who is like really slutty, flirty. Her energy is just everywhere for anyone all the time. That is one way of terming leaky. And there's a male version of that too. She's more contained. So her energy is contained in her body. And then she opens it up to her king. Like she opens it up to him in lovemaking. She's not a prude, but she doesn't share it with just anyone. There's a real sense of grace and contained receptivity in her. You can feel she's receptive and available, but that there's like a little bit that's kept at bay. She's in deep celebration of his leadership. She loves to feel his leadership. She loves to welcome his decision making, his direction. So if you think about this in a day-to-day scenario, it could be as simple as him choosing what you're having for dinner when you're going out. I want to take you out for dinner. Let's go to that place that we've been talking about. And he books it and he drives you there and everything else is sorted. She celebrates this, she relishes, and her whole body opens in it, but she's also in deep appreciation of it. So, number 4, she has appreciation and gratitude for all of the ways that men show up for her. All men. So, her king might show up for her in a very specific way, but she's still an appreciation of other men because other men show up for her too. So, there's again this grace. She's very playful and she's connected to her heart. So people can feel her heart. They can feel her love, her compassion, her care. She's a wise, compassion is probably the best word I can think of. She's really got that invitation in her body where people are like, oh, she feels so nice to connect with. She's also really connected to her vulnerability and not afraid of it. She knows there's strength in her vulnerability, but she's mindful and discerning with it. She doesn't give it to just anyone. She doesn't just give her sex, her love, her unarmored heart, her full devotion to anyone, anytime who just shows up. It needs to be something that she opens bit by bit, like a gradual opening of a flower. Discernment and vulnerability go hand in hand for the devotional woman. Otherwise, again, we go into collapse. If we give too much of ourselves too soon, or in outside of, the container or the covenant of a relationship where he's deeply chosen you and committed to you, sometimes we can feel like we're giving too much. And then we start to resent that. So knowing the range of vulnerability and containment is really, really a refined skill. She trusts her intuition because she's not stuck in her head all the time. She's connected to her womb wisdom, her heart, her sex, her whole body. And she knows when to speak her truth or let wisdom come through her as the oracle. The oracle is, some people would call her the muse. For me, she's different. She is has access to higher wisdom, and sometimes women, information just comes through us and we don't really know where it's come from. It's an intuitive hit. But men really value this when they're in their healthy masculine. They love the oracle, and it's a big gift for them. And she knows when to choose what's appropriate for the moment, when to submit, when to completely give over to her king in a sexual moment, for example, when to be fierce and say to him, I'm not in agreement with that decision, but to do it in a respectful way without disrespecting his power, and when to offer counsel as the oracle. She has discernment around all these things. So she shows up differently in different moments as is needed. So how do we feel about these traits? I'm curious, maybe rate yourself out of 10. How much are you showing up as this? So one, there's your capacity to be this woman, but most importantly, how much are you showing up as this version of you in your life? Just rate yourself out of 10 for yourself and notice if there's room for growth there. All right. Yes, there's definitely room for growth in us all. All right, so let's start to talk about how we can become more of this woman. Yeah, there's definitely going to be things in here that are hard for some of us and easy for others. And that comes back to our personal wounding and the work we've already done, but also the journey we've had through life to date. It's not ever about judging ourselves. It's just about, okay, there is room for expansion here, especially if I want the man who's the reciprocal of this, who wants this kind of a woman in his life. So things we can do. Can you still hear me okay? Because I can hear a lawnmower and I don't know if it's coming through the mic. Can you just give me a thumbs up or something? Yeah, it's okay. Let me know if you lose me and I'll put some headphones on. Okay. You can't hear it. Oh, that's good. I don't know what my microphone is picking up, so I thought I'd better check. The humanity of it all. So things we can do as women. Coming back into the body is essential because we are not that fully integrated woman if we're not connected beyond just the head. And the power of a woman, the power of her grace, the oracle, the gifts that she gives beyond words, they all come through the body. The body is the ultimate transmission of the feminine. We talk in a tantric sense about Shiva and Shakti. Shakti is through the body. So we need to be in our bodies first. So notice when you're not. For example, I did yoga for a really long time. I did yoga. I've been doing yoga since I was 19 and I'm in my mid 40s. And even throughout my marriage, despite doing a lot of yoga, I was not really in my body. I could do a yoga practice and feel my muscles and stretch and breathe. I thought I was in my body. It wasn't until I started to do the kind of work that I do now that I realized I was not living in my body. I was living in my head. And then I would feel my body when I did a yoga class or worked out. And then I'd come straight back up into my head. So having the awareness that is a lot of deep wisdom in our body, and it's something that most of us need to work on because most of us have spent more time out of our body because it didn't feel safe. Safety, again, is a really big one for us as women. So number 2, facing your fears and wounds and shadows around men. We all have them. Don't make yourself wrong for having them, but know that they're probably there. And if you are not having the relationship with men that you want, these could be one of the big reasons why. It's a whole conversation around working through these things. I think I'll leave it there for now. When we work through our wounds, our fears, our shadows, we start to learn how to remove the barriers that stop the love from flowing that we talked about in the heart, and then by extension, devotion, because devotion flows from a place of overflow or fullness in us. So when the devotion flows, we are already feeling safe and resourced. So learning how to get through all the wounding so we can really come back into our fullness, as I spoke about in the beginning, is a really simple but not so easy task for us as women in the world that we live in. And yet it's necessary if we want to be in sacred union, devotional relating with a man. Learning how to create your own internal safety. I touched on this earlier as well. And the reason is if you're walking around with a guarded heart, men won't feel you. If he can't feel you, he won't care about you. He will not take care of you. He will not protect you. He will not do things for you. He will not want to be in relationship with you. He might as well be in relationship with either someone who's a robot or a man as a business partner. The gifts of the feminine are embodied, and so your heart is a key to that. So learning to accept this as our gift and not hide away from it is a big journey for us as women. From that place, and the more embodied we become, we can start to learn how to build wider skills to express our needs, our wants, our desires. It's also really, really crucial, number 6, that we learn how men think. You know, in my marriage, I was like, I understand men. I know what they want. Sex, it was what I thought. And again, I was in a completely disrespectful dynamic with this man for such a long time. So understanding how men think, how they feel, how they process, how they express love, how they make requests, how they show devotion, and what they need from us is not something most of us have learned. And I definitely encourage you to understand men better if you haven't already done some work on this. It's a big key that I find most women miss. We look at relationship skills, but we don't understand the man that we're in relationship is different to us. And then finally, learning how to foster respect, reverence, and devotion for men. We need to understand how they think first in number 6 before we can really come into deep respect and reverence for them in the way that they receive. So there's a piece of logic and understanding that needs to shift here for most of us, because then we can embody it. Some women do it naturally, but those women are rare. They exist, but they're rare because most of us have had so much negative programming around men, as I've already talked about, and that's what's been modeled by our parents. Okay. Yeah, I just muted myself because the mower's right here. So, in relation to your comment in the chat, I'm just going to go back. It's hard to face fears, wounds, and shadows around men when these deeply embodied men don't seem to exist. Or when it feels like I've found one, they prove me wrong and they lack emotional maturity. Yes, I hear you. And the way that I view this is we need to come back to ourselves. And if we can't see these men in the world, we're still holding on to fears. We're still holding on to projections. We're still stuck in our wounding. I can tell you this for a fact. The more I've done this work on myself, the more these men pop up everywhere. Everywhere. There is plenty of wonderful men in the world, and I have colleagues who verify this, who work specifically with men. They're like, where are the good men? They're fucking everywhere. But when we're walking around with a veil of, it's not safe, I can't trust them, they're going to hurt me, this is what happened last time, these things taint our field, they close down our body, and we are not available to even see where they are showing up. They can be around the corner and we don't even know what they look like because we're too stuck in our own wounding. That's the truth. And that's why I believe the work for most women is all of these things, because until we can remove our own triggers and wounding and projections, we won't see them even if they're standing right in front of us. And then the second part is we need to learn how to relate with them, as I talked about in the bottom section, how men think and feel and show up for us, and treating them with respect. We need to understand that too, because if we treat them the way that we've treated other men, the healthy integrated man I spoke about, he will not tolerate princess behavior. So let me give you an example of princess behavior. I talked about the queen and the posture of the queen. Princess behavior is, if you think about the princess in the kingdom, she's like, oh, I want the prince, he's so cute. When's he going to come and claim me? She's very entitled. And most of us as women have this. Most of us have had to grow through this, or we're still stuck in it and we're in the process of growing. So I deserve this. It's coming to me, but also who am I being that is the reciprocal of that? Princesses can be very blamey. They're like, oh, he's not good enough for me, or he's not mature enough for me. And so there's a real immaturity in the princess pose. She's very leaky. I talked about leaky energy and the containment. Containment is the queen, leaky is the princess. The princess can't speak her needs and wants and desires. The queen can. The princess, her heart's available and her sex is available to potentially anyone. She doesn't have healthy containment and discernment around boundaries and healthy devotion. So there's a lot of deeper aspects here between the princess and the queen, which I won't go into further. But understanding if we have aspects of this, and again, I've worked on this a lot in myself, Most of us have aspects of this princess energy that we have to mature through to attract the integrated man. So that is my invitation, to look at the places where you are holding yourself back from that. And then suddenly you'll see men differently, because they are everywhere. So coming back to where I was, specific suggestions that you can start to take home with you if you like some of these invitations. Practice regular embodiment. I have a number of free embodiment practices on my collections page of my website. I'll pop the link in the email that I send out. So you can do some embodiment. There's essential embodiment practice, which is designed to help bring us back into our body and start to unarmor the heart. I have a number of mini courses that will help you with embodiment if you don't know what it is and how to do it, but it's not yoga. It looks yogic, but it's an extension of that, because it's about feminine practice. Yoga is more masculine in nature. Embodiment is more feminine in nature. So get in touch with some of the resources I have around that if you don't even know where to start with embodiment. Learn to recognize your shadows. Do what we would call shadow work. So that could be journaling. Things that scare me about men are, and sort of trying to dig into your unconscious to find some of your shadows and fears and wounds, and then go and do therapy on those things. Because I can guarantee, like, I still have them. They're really small, but they still come up sometimes, and I know how to work with them. But years ago, I didn't even know they were there, and then I couldn't even work with them. So awareness is the first key. Having tools like embodiment and support is the next step. Shadow work is one of the most powerful things that I've ever done that has helped this process in myself. And I'm going to talk about that more in a second. Try and move out of any numbness or fear that you're holding in your body. Again, if you're kind of a bit numb sexually, or your heart's really armored, you're not in full softness, you're not in that posture of receptivity. Learning how to create your own internal safety so your radiance can shine through. A radiant woman is not walking around feeling scared. She feels completely safe in her body. It's like a plant again. It's like she's just flowering open. Learn how to unarmor your heart and practice this. This is, again, as an embodiment practice, but learn how to do this, because even in moments where you're engaging with men, there'll be times where you'll feel yourself close, or you'll feel him pull away, and being able to open your heart and invite the reconnection throughout the body without words is a really powerful practice, and one of the deepest feminine practices, to be able to move energy through your body that becomes an invitation to him. And these are more advanced things that I teach in my programs. Learning how to stop blaming men for all the things that are not working for you, for the times they've hurt you, which are just, but if you hold on to them, they're still going to have an impact in your body. That's the truth of it. So you can choose to hold on to it, or you can choose to let go of it and try and show up as the more queenly, contained, healthy version of you. We've all had wounding. We've all had shit happen. But how we continue to be in resonance with that, or let that affect us, is the difference between someone who is stuck and someone who is growing and evolving. So learning how to be in deeper respect for men is probably a better way of saying that. So there were some questions that some of you sent through when you registered, and I just want to summarize these on this slide and acknowledge that I looked through them. And I can't really go into them today because most of these are very deep topics, and they're a bit outside of the scope of what I've already covered. You might have had some of these things slightly answered in what I've covered so far. But thank you for sending them through. I am actually going to do a masterclass on some of the lower ones, managing your fears around men, spotting red flags in men, finding the good, trustworthy men. I'm going to do a masterclass potentially next month on women who are dating and helping to find these men. I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but if you are on I'll add you to my email list so you'll be aware of when I release tickets for that. So please stay tuned for that if you're one of the people asking those kind of questions, because they're really common questions. Again, a lot of women ask me these questions. I can tell you they're everywhere, but knowing how to identify them requires all the things I talked about in 2 slides back about what we need to move through in us. And then learning what this man looks like and how he's going to feel. He's going to feel different than other men that you've met, because most of us have not encountered these kind of men regularly enough. We've encountered men who are wounded. So we don't even recognize in our body what a healthy integrated man looks like, because he's not going to be forcing himself on us. So again, it's a big topic. Submission and devotion, again, it's a really big topic. I have a few little things on this that I've done on my social media. So if you feel inclined, you might want to go through my Insta feed and have a bit of a look. But all of these things are actually things I teach in my deeper programs. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of that in a minute, because we'll be here for 2 more hours if I start going into these questions. And I want to do them justice. I don't want to try and rush through. Is there anything else? Yeah. So as we start to kind of move towards the end of the call, what I would like to share in summary is the things that I did to become the woman that I am now. And I am still a work in progress. I'm not saying that I'm done. But again, when I look back at the woman I was in my marriage and all the things I did wrong, and the woman I am now and how I relate to men and how men show up for me, it's honestly worlds apart. And again, I've written lots of things about this on my social media. If you follow me on other platforms, you'll see there's lots of content around this that I can't go into in detail now. But the biggest one was facing my shadows, which is my wounds and my projections. He's not good enough. He's not smart enough. He's not taking care of me. Why didn't he do that? He's selfish. Like, these are what I would consider projections. When we have a thought and we're making it about the other person, another way to think about it is a story we're running in our head. These are projections and they are shadows that we need to own. Learning how to work with our shadows, which the Jungian definition of that would be part of our unconscious that we've pushed to the back and locked away in the basement, and we don't want to face it. And a lot of tantric embodied practice, which is certainly everything that I do is related to that, is bringing them from the closet out into the light and looking at them and going, oh, look, there's this part of me that I'm really ashamed of. Wow. What's actually hurting underneath this part? And then we use somatics to move through that and to clear it and to repattern it. When we do that, that's when our deeper wounds around men start to shift, and we stop castrating them because we stop projecting on them. So the more I did that, the more I healed my wounds around men, the more I let myself trust men and open up to men again. And most importantly, I learned how to love men in the way that they appreciate. And again, this is something I'm constantly working on, growing, evolving with. But certainly the men around me, when I even think about co-facilitators that I teach with, they do acknowledge that they can feel the way that I show up in this, that it works for them, that I understand the currency of men, and I know that I didn't 10 years ago. So it's just to give you a reference point that there is a never-ending spectrum here of growth. And if you want guidance in that, that is what I'm here for. This is the most deepest part of what I am passionate about teaching, and I live what I teach, meaning this is the journey I've been on, and I'm not stopping anytime soon. I mentioned reconnecting with my body through embodied practice. And the biggest part of that was being feelable, because the more armored I was, the more men wouldn't see me. That I would feel, why don't they see me? Because I was hiding. So learning to be soft, but also contained and discerning in that queen energy is really an important skill that most women need to learn, because most of us are either armored and hard or sloppy and leaky. Learning the discernment piece is quite powerful. And then the last one is really learning to celebrate my gifts as a feminine leaning woman. and cherishing them. How I cherish my cycle, how I rest when I bleed, how I don't work hard all the time, that I work with the cyclical nature of my body, how I honor my emotions, how I ask for what I need from men. These are things I've had to work on. It's taken time. But all of that helps me to feel more safe with men, and I can trust them. I can surrender to them at the appropriate time or with the appropriate person with discernment. But safety is something I have inside of me. And again, that's taken a lot of work to get to, but it is possible for every woman. And my invitation is for you to, move in that direction, whichever of these are relevant for you. And so in order to become this person, I developed a program 3 years ago called Devoted. And I started teaching this program to women. And the women had really amazing results. So I taught this program for 2 years because of the aspect of embodied teaching that I've touched on and repatterning our views around men. The combination of these, what I would call yin and yang approaches, is deeply transformational through the whole body and the whole nervous system. And it's everything that I learned through hundreds of hours of courses and study and lots of money to fix my own challenges, essentially. I put together this course. And this year I decided that I would expand it. And it's expanded. So what was Devoted is now the Devotional Woman. And it's now a 6-month course. And essentially, it is my gift for women who really want to go deeper into this work. So if all the things I'm talking about appeal to you and you'd like some support to do that work versus trying to do it all on your own like I did, then that's what I'm here for. And that's what I'd like to invite you into. I have lots of other offerings, but I'm going to just briefly mention what this one involves for those of you who would like to know more. So it is a 6-month program. It is online, just like this, except unlike today, we do embodiment in every single call. We do a lot of somatic practice, and there's a lot of home practice. We start in just over a month, actually. Wow, look at that. Just over a month. So it's a 6-month container. It's heavily embodiment focused. And the reason I mention that's important is there are other women who are teaching this kind of work, teachers of mine even, and they teach the theory, but they don't teach the somatic change and the nervous system work and the embodied practice that I do. That has come through different like I've had teachers that have taught me embodiment and teachers that have taught me mindset programming. And I've actually brought it all together to create this program because it's what worked for me. And it's what has worked for 2 years of teaching this content as well. So this is partly what makes it different to other content out there in this space of devotional relating. We gather for 6 months, as I said, live calls. There's a short break, but essentially we gather every week because consistency is what's required to make the deeper change. You don't have to be at every call, but trying to be there for most calls would be beneficial because you want to keep showing up for yourself. That's where the deeper change happens. I offer a lot of support through Telegram. It's a space where we have a community of women who are doing the program, and we share and reflect together, and a real beautiful sense of kinship opens up in there. But I'm in there every day supporting the women. So essentially you get a lot of private support on top, and you get 12 months access to all the teachings. So we start on the 20th of March and we go through till the 21st of August. So it's quite a deep dive program. As I said, I ran it as Devoted for a couple of years, and it was 3 months, but there was a lot of extra content that I always wanted to teach. And I decided this was the year to bring it in and just make it a real transformational journey at a whole other level by making it 6 months. So some of the things that are included, it'll be over 35 hours of teaching in lifetime. If you miss a call, everything's uploaded into the portal. You get all the replays, you get guided practices. There is 5 key modules of content. I'll pop a link in the email for you. There is rituals, somatic practices, embodiment practices, audio practices. I give a lot of content away in my courses. I'm incredibly generous, so I'm told. And so there's a lot of things for you to take away and use beyond just the 6 months, but also the deeper change happens through the body. And that's why there's a lot of practices that I'll be offering you. And it's intentionally created as a women's only space. So there is an early bird discount if you register over the next week. The price was on the previous slide. So I have an early bird discount if you want to pay up front, which is 2222. And I have a payment plan for people who would like to just pay it off over 6 months. I also offer an 8-month payment plan, an extended payment plan if you need a little bit more time, but just reach out to me privately for that. I don't have links for that. I'm just going to show you one last thing before we finish up. Sorry, 2 more things. This is one of my graduates from last year. And her experience with the course was really, really powerful. I have many of these, but I just wanted to share one with you today. This was an incredibly deep journey that gifted me an abundance of wonderful teachings and enhanced awareness of myself and men. It has been life-changing for me and my husband. Bree is truly amazing, and my life has been enriched greatly by her wisdom. This is a woman who's been married for nearly 30 years. So when people are in long-term partnership and they're surviving and they get that much benefit from the course, I feel very grateful and also deeply humbled. And so if that's something that calls to you, whether you are in partnership or not, I would love to invite you to check it out. I'll pop all the links in the email for you. And the last thing is I have a few bonus offers. So if you join, even if you join on the early bird, this is open to everyone who joins through this masterclass. I will give you the full Embodying Aphrodite course, which is a course of mine that I ran a few years ago, which is all about sensual embodiment practices. And I will give you that for free. So you have additional things that you can work through outside of this container. So that's a free bonus gift if you would really like some more embodied support, and you will have lifetime access to that course. For women who like these concepts but aren't ready for a 6-month commitment, then I would invite you to check out the Devoted mini course. So what was Devoted, I've archived some of the teachings and simplified it and condensed it so it's much, much less complicated, but you've got some key nuggets there that you can take away that build on what we've talked about today. And that's self-paced, so you can just go through it anytime in your own, at your own pace. And that's only $111, so it's very cheap and cheerful and accessible for everybody. You can also book out some private sessions with me. I would recommend a 3-session bundle is the best way to start. So I have a discount for that if you buy 3. You can go one at a time, but I really prefer people who are willing to work for at least 3 sessions. So please check my email, or if you're on YouTube watching this, check out the links in my link tree, or send me an email if you need to find some of these things, and get in touch if you need help with anything. So in closing, I would like to say thank you so much for being here. If you need anything more, please get in touch. If you have questions, please get in touch. If you would like to say thank you, that you enjoyed some things, please get in touch. I would love to hear from you. Either way, I hope that you've taken away some really useful things around, that you can reflect on in yourself around man-woman relating, around the concept of sacred union, around the kind of woman that you want to be, and maybe some of the things that are holding you back from being that woman or having that relationship in your life. And thank you to those who joined me live. It's beautiful to have you here as well. I'll pop the replay up, and I look forward to hearing from some of you in due course. Have a wonderful rest of the day.